So I was Googling statistics about law firm billing for this show, and the suggested searches were pretty interesting. Based on my inquiries, Google recommended how to get out of paying your lawyer. What happens if I don't pay my lawyer? How to get your money back from a lawyer. Consequences not paying attorney fees. My lawyer is suing me for unpaid fees. Can you go to jail for not paying your lawyer? Can a lawyer charge you without a contract? And finally, the most brutal, I can't afford my lawyer anymore. As someone who works in a professional services capacity myself, I find these queries both appalling and intriguing at the same time. Clearly, there's an issue here, and it's universal. This is something every law firm has to deal with. So, how do you deal with it? Is getting paid late, or sometimes not at all, an unavoidable occupational hazard for lawyers? Are there systems and processes you can build into your law firm's client management that can help alleviate the late pays and no pays, or maybe even prevent them from happening in the first place? Well, that's what we're talking about today on Lawsome, how to make sure you get the money you earned for the work you did. You ready? Let's go.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that's built like our favorite cities, on rock and roll. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in personal and professional developments. I am your co-host and rock and roll architect, Jake Sanders, and with me is Paul Julius, who hates Jefferson's Starship.
I know. I'm sorry. The airplane was okay, but once they upgraded, it lost me. It just lost me.
The airplane was okay.
Yeah, it was right.
Who traded that in? They're like, guys, I traded in the airplane. Oh, great. Yeah, Mickey Thomas comes back. They're like, what did you get, Gray Slick? What did you?
I
got a Starship.
I guess, I don't know. I can feed my head, but I can't build a city on rock and roll. That's all I can say. There's only so far I can go. You know?
I know. Which white rabbit did you follow to the dealership? They're like, I got a cheap Starship. The mileage on it is great, space-wise.
Yeah.
Like light year-wise? This light mileage?
Straight out. Driven only in the 80s.
Anyway, let's beam into the episode. Oh.
What's on the show? On the show today, we discuss an article from Lawyerist about the best way to handle accounts receivable. And then we talk to CEO of Headnote, Sarah Schaaf, about how to improve your payments at your law firm. And as always, we zero out our tab with our client. 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The hot take today is brought to you by Jared Correa on thelawyerist.com. There's a section where lawyers get to write in questions about law firm marketing and management, and Jared answers it. This one's entitled, "The Best Way to Handle Accounts Receivable is to Eliminate Them." And he's just talking about zeroing out the tab and, all that.
He was talking about killing people.
I know. I was like,
dude, that's a little extreme. I mean,
yeah, the first paragraph's like, aim for their knees. And you say, well, it's a loan shark. Isn't that? So anyway, no. So, but
edge to him.
The question that he got was from a lawyer who runs their own firm, but they say I feel like I never have any money, and then I realized I haven't billed anybody for 3 months because they just haven't been keeping up with it. And then his answer is sort of like, no wonder, of course, this is how it is. So he has 4 steps, which are really good on how to fix it and address it. One of them, be a better vetter of clients, make sure you vet the leads that you get and kind of make sure that you, ensure that they're okay for it. Then you get paid up front, do a retainer, e-commerce solutions, create software that you can kind of build into your process. And then also don't get lost in just working, because a lot of lawyers are just going to do the work and I maybe they'll pay me, maybe they won't. But it's weird to we find out later with Sarah that lawyers aren't getting paid like we think they are. It's one again of these myths that we get, that lawyers are just somehow, they have a giant hat with money in it that they just are pulling money in and out of magically. I just don't think we conceive of how they receive the accounts and invoices. And so I love this. Jared's amazing. Great friend of the pod. My take is that, it just seems like it's such a common problem everywhere that it feels awkward to ask for things, so people don't.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's weird that actually getting paid for what you did is an afterthought, and I think it's like the timing of the whole thing. Like, okay, this person, yes, it's a good case, hired, sign up, do the whole thing, you settle or whatever, and now it's all done, and now like, oh, okay, well, we got all the way here, and we found out that they don't have the money, or they don't want to give me the money, like.
Well,
That's rough.
but it's even more difficult. I mean, you pay money to investigate leads. You pay money to look into cases. You pay money to look into the viability of taking on litigation work, or it's very difficult. Some things aren't as easy as they seem. The $1 billion TBI case that walks in of a 23-year-old neurosurgeon that got their hands destroyed in a commercial accident. That just doesn't. They just
specific there, Jake.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, that thing just walks in, and you're like, "Well, obvious. This is it," or we'll find some way to collect. It's not as obvious. So finding the money and where it comes from, and if it's contingency based or retainers, but your point is that there's options, and maybe that's sort of where it gets lost. Is I think maybe people think it's on them, and really, if you're a solo, if you're a small, it is. So what do you mean there's solutions? What's your thought here?
So I think there's one thing that's very unique to legal, because I think everybody who does some kind of service runs into this sort of billing and paying issue at some point, because it's weird. Like, okay, we did the service, we've had the final meeting, people have signed off. How do I back that up? How do I enforce it? And particularly with law and legal, if you're working on contingency, I mean, you kind of have this mindset of, okay, well, I'm going to have to wait until this is, settled, or it goes to trial,
or work it up,
whatever.
Work the case up. Yeah.
Absolutely. So there is that there in the first place. But I think there are definitely solutions out there that everybody needs to be thinking about. Obviously, as retainer, I know that's not always a great thing to do, but maybe getting some info up front. I like the idea that Jared suggests here about e-commerce. Something as simple as, using a credit card, something like that, like making sure that you can take those sort of things. There's a lot of different things, but to me, the biggest, and we talked to Sarah about this later, is like, it's gotta be, you have to think about this before you are dropped in front of it. You have to think about this and set these things up. I mean, that's what she does. There's, everybody who does this in retail and stuff like this, they thinking about how to process the payment. Like, they wouldn't even open the doors if they didn't think about that. And any other business should be no different, especially with so many, I mean, PayPal, Square, Stripe, all those different things these days. Get that locked down, make sure that you're giving people these options.
Yeah. And Headnote is a good product. We talked to Sarah because it's an incremental fix that can address fundamental problems in the way that you're capturing revenue, reporting on growth, looking at measurements that can help you, tally all of this stuff. And so, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say, I think too, this is a problem that nobody wants to deal with this. I mean, this is just another thing, and it can get ugly, and I don't want to think about it. And a lot of times, again, you don't start dealing with it until you're in a bad place, and then the good options are gone. It's too late. I need to pay my bills, so you need to pay yours. And now that's going to make it tough, because now you're getting adversarial, you have letters, people
with a client, and it's interesting because Because Jared talks about you're now fighting with a client that you've been trying to help the whole time.
Yeah,
And that is
absolutely.
so bizarre. I think that also failed to register in my head until Sarah mentioned it, and here Jared talked about it.
Yeah.
But there's something about the fixes that needs to be in front, and so the service industry that you said, it is an important thing before the service is enacted. We talk about payment, just like Vanessa Ugatti talked about in one of our early episodes, knowing what your worth is, charging what your worth is, getting it up front. That's just standard. And in some way, it's become very difficult for us to approach that. Headnote is something that you can apply at small steps that can change the way you capture the worth of and report on it too. As Sarah's talking about, it's not just about capturing it; it's about measuring it so you can then grow what you've measured. So,
and it's designed. She's a lawyer. It's designed for lawyers and law firms.
Right.
I mean,
and it came from the Silicon Valley. It has the Google juju, on it, and the network effect built into it. It's a really great interview, but it's great to get this piece from Jared too, and he ends it on a really fantastic way. And it's typical Jared. He's talking about, he's a car enthusiast, I suppose, but he gives some really great advice, in this lawyerist article. And that's why we chose it. And I'll end this and we'll go into the interview with what he says. If you want to take home the money you're making, it's time to start paying attention to your accounts receivable and to act to produce that figure simultaneously. Get paid early and often, and maybe you'll finally be able to afford that Plymouth Superbird.
Lawson continues, but first, a word from our sponsor.
On the streets of the internet, where the distractions are high and competition is higher, a lawyer is only as good as their website. When it comes to legal services, lawyers are the experts. But when it comes to legal marketing online, that's when Consultwebs takes the wheel. Any lawyer looking to grow their business online can generate more leads from their website by hiring Consultwebs. Since 1999, we've tested thousands of digital advertising strategies for hundreds of law firms across the country, so we know what flips and what flops. For more information, go to consultwebs.com.
And now, for a Lawson interview.
Sarah Schaaf holds a JD degree from Loyola University's Chicago School of Law. She's worked for various companies, including a stop at the legal department of Google, before leaving the practice of law and becoming the founder and CEO of Headnote, the leading provider of legal billing software dedicated to helping lawyers get paid faster and more efficiently. It's this endeavor that's brought her to the Lawson Studios today, and we are so grateful she could join us. Sarah, thanks for coming aboard.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, boy. So we're wondering, there's so many different payment options, Venmo, PayPal, Square, and then check, money order, Bitcoin, vape coin. What made you decide something to create a payment system, software specifically for lawyers? And what does Headnote do differently and better than anything else? It's pitch mode. Go, Sarah.
Absolutely. So I think first kind of thing to really understand about Headnote is that certainly payments is our lifeblood. Like that is a huge part of what we do. And that's one of the reasons that I left Google to start the company was because I know how hard it is to get paid as an attorney. But really, Headnote is much more than that. I mean, we are really looking at a law firm's post-invoicing process as one of the most broken and dysfunctional parts of firm operations. And so payments, certainly a big part of what we do. That's one of the benefits you get out of using Headnote. But Headnote is really a way for the legal industry to change the way that they think about accounts receivable and to start using technology in a part of their process that is pretty much long forgotten, and actually is the part that maybe matters more than any other part, because it's the part that tells you if you have a healthy business. And so, yes, payments, but that's just part of the overall accounts receivable change that we need to see in the industry. And Headnote is paving the way and looking at the AR process and that part of a firm operation totally different than any other company.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I noticed at my old law firm, like once it got to disbursement, the mental, just everybody checked out. Like that was
exactly.
it. It's
right.
the end. But there was no final touch or some place for them to, finalize, the action or maybe continue the relationship. And, what you're talking about is a really interesting intersection in between running a law firm and being the expert of the law firm. And a lot of lawyers are sort of like hesitant to get in here, but solos and smalls seem like they're really... Are they your main target audience? Who's adopting and using Headnote? Is it big firms, small firms? Is it solos? What does the demographic of your user base kind of look like?
Yeah, so it's a few different parts of the market. Let's be honest, this is a problem that even the largest law firms in the country have, right? Like everybody. And I've worked at numerous law firms as an attorney. I've worked at numerous law firms that my family owned when I was growing up. That was our family business. Both of my parents are practicing attorneys, and they both left their roles as practicing, big law and corporate lawyers to start their own independent law firm. So I've spent more time working in a back office of a law firm than I'd like to care to admit. But the accounts receivable part of a firm, anything that happens after the invoice goes out, essentially, is like pretty much the universally hated part of every law firm in the entire country. And I've experienced that. Like nobody wants to deal with the collection, the tracking, like who actually needs to be the touch point with the client. How do we deal with like the reconciliation on the accounting side? What if we want to attach interest? Like, we don't even know how to do that. How are we going to track that? Like, it's just a nightmare. So everyone's kind of like, I don't want to deal with it. And that's, essentially what Headnote is all about, is making all of those processes better than they are now. So it's certainly something everyone faces. Our customers today range from firms that are one, solo kind of small shop to firms that are up to 100 attorneys. That's really our focus. So kind of that kind of early mid-market customer as well, and anything in between. Above that, we don't right now kind of actively work to service, though we do have, a bunch of inbound from larger firms that want help with their AR processes as well.
So here's my question. I was trying to anticipate this, but I'm thinking that, do lawyers feel cheap when they're asking to close the loop and asking clients to pay? Do they feel like that's beneath them?
Mm-hmm. There's a few things here that it's part of my kind of general hypothesis. So, I've experienced this myself so many times. So I think that there's this, what I call handshake business of law, that's always kind of existed. Like we have never as an industry up until really the last couple of years, maybe like assigned net terms to our invoices, like a really basic business practice in any other area or any other service industry. We just don't really do that. It's almost like we're supposed to be on the same side as our client. They came to us, like, let's face it, most people don't use a lawyer or need a lawyer when something really good is going on. It's almost always because there's been something hard or traumatic, like unless maybe you're like setting up a trust. And even then that might be a result of something traumatic. Like it's not usually a time of life where people are you're there because you are protecting your client and you guys are on the same side of the table. And then, we get into this part of the business relationship. And I think it makes lawyers generally uncomfortable because I'm supposed to be on the same side of the table. And now I'm, somehow positioned in a way where I am like against or counter my client. And it's generally uncomfortable for anyone, but we have a history as an industry of not like setting things up in a way that good business practices will then follow. And so we don't really like talk about the things as far as like, what are the net terms going to be? What kind of payment terms? How do we like to get paid? We just kind of like overlook it. And then we wait until the end. And now it's like, I have to get paid. And it's like, we have to deal with it. But we've set no good example in this relationship. For instance, if you go to, your doctor's office, right? A service provider. First thing they do is like, I'm going to need to collect your copay, or like, we're going to get paid right now. Here's all the ways we take payment. Great. If you're like, actually, I'm going to, do a payment after, or I'd like to wait because I have like an insurance reconciliation. No problem. You get that bill and it's like payment is due 30 days. You go and use a service like, somebody to perform work at your house. I mean, the expectation is half up front, half when the job's done. Like, it's very clear. This is the way that we like to get paid in the timeline. And that, and the expectation set, and it's expected of you. We just never have really done that as an industry. It's been more of a handshake kind of arrangement. And so bad business practices have kind of followed. And I think we're getting a lot better at that as an industry, but there are certain types of lawyers or maybe generationally who feel really uncomfortable with this idea of, it's a business. And that's because like we're there to help. We're service providers. Most of us do this because we want to help clients.
Yeah.
So to expand on that a little bit about maybe the generational thing and stuff like that, I'm curious what's the response been like from people who've been using this, from lawyers and maybe law firms in general, if you're talking about office managers and stuff like that. Anybody throw something at you weren't expecting?
Oh yeah, I mean, like you always have to be prepared for the unexpected, right? Like I think I've been working in this industry for like longer than I'd like to admit, and would date myself. But you think you've heard it all, and you'll hear something new. So for sure. But the thing that I've really found over the past couple of years in particular, and this is something that really started like 10 or 11 years ago. I graduated from law school in 2008. Which was obviously interesting timing to do like anything. But that was tough. Those are tough times.
Yeah, it was a great time for losing money.
It was. If that was something you were trying to excel at.
The repo man.
Really
yeah.
well
I turned $1 million into 10,000. It was great.
It was amazing. It's like a magic trick.
Horrible magic trick. Yeah.
Horrible magic trick. I mean, that's the really interesting thing, is that, as we all know, like usually the legal industry is immune from recession. So when the economy is reacting poorly, filings generally go up. And so it actually results in the legal industry needing to be busier, usually during a time of economic hardship. But that was not true in 2008, which was a true depression. And the industry definitely kind of freaked out. I remember even being a new associate and seeing firms that had a couple firms went out of business. A couple of firms had, hiring, we're actually paying the associates like less salary to take the year off, because they just couldn't afford some of these big salaries. And the OCI jobs that, people had vied for on campus, like, dried up. And I I went from Chicago, where I was in law school, to San Francisco, where I live, and kind of figured I just wouldn't have a job for a while and wasn't really sure what I was going to do, but just looking at the landscape. But I was, got lucky. I got a job right away. And started practicing early 2009 after I got my bar results, November of 2008. So started practicing, and right away I remember a different landscape at this firm. It was a really successful mid-sized firm in San Francisco, and it was pretty bare bones as far as staff goes. Like, they had, really had to make some changes to make unit economics work. And so right away there was, more non-billable things that associates and partners, but just that attorneys had to do. And it was a really kind of different landscape. And I thought it was maybe just a moment in time, but it really turned into more of an industry-wide shift, right? Like, we have more people that are working in segmented parts of the industry than we did 10 years ago. More people, we can see even from the rise of different, legal service provider platforms, right? Like, we have more use for contract labor than we ever did in the past. which is interesting. And there's certainly been more of a kind of eye towards how do we make like legal operations more efficient when we don't have as many humans, because we can't have as many humans because the unit economics just don't support this kind of a business. So I've seen this big shift take place where we are looking at different parts of our process as far as how do we make this all make sense, and where can technology play a better part in what we're doing. And I think that is just a general shift in the industry. Like there's been more move towards technology adoption in the past 5 years than I've seen, in the 20 years prior. And I think that's in part because we were forced into needing to make changes to make this a sustainable business model, but also because we do have a generational change taking place. My dad is, my parents are both baby boomers, and this is my dad's last week at his firm. Like he's retiring at the end of this week. My mom did so at the beginning of this year. Nice. And so we're seeing that it's my colleagues are now the people at their firms that are in charge of making decisions. And
oh no.
Right. Like who's in charge now? And
right.
There's a different mindset, I think, towards how do we use technology and how do we make this like business actually make more sense? And so we're seeing kind of a change just generally across the industry, which is exciting.
To continue that theme of mindset and technology, you're not the first lawyer we've talked to that's made the leap into entrepreneurship, particularly with tech. Any thoughts on why someone would want to make the switch from practicing law to founding a startup? And do you think having that legal lawyer in the trenches experience was a plus or a minus when it came to, developing legal tech and software solutions?
I think, and this is like partially maybe me like just telling myself this because I gotta believe it, but I think that our legal degrees are going to help no matter what we decide to do. Analytical thinking is something there's no substitute for, and all of that. So I like to think that it gets me very far. There have been many, many, many times that I'm like, God, I wish that I would have put any kind of time into learning how to code and just be more technical, because that's not something that lawyers, I just never thought of that as my path. But maybe that would have been interesting. I think that works for and against us, right? Like I think why are there people? There's a lot of people that were lawyers that don't practice anymore, right? It's a hard job. I think it's very glamorized by what we see on TV, and a lot of people go to law school because they have a different view of what it's going to be like than when they get out and practice. And there's a high dissatisfaction rate as an industry because of that exact issue. Like it's a hard job, and if anyone thinks it's not, then they're going to be really, surprised at how hard it is. So part of it is that we all kind of, there's a lot of lawyers just on the planet generally, and a lot of them maybe didn't know what they're getting into. So we see people doing a lot of different stuff with their degree. I think it works for and against us. I think that if you're a lawyer, you're extremely risk averse, like in your thinking, at least in certain ways, or you're trained to find risk, right? And minimize it. And so it's really hard to think about taking a set path, like partnership track or working at a large corporation, and like spinning that on its head to go do something else. So I think that's kind of counterintuitive to our training. And so it's actually a stretch to put yourself in that situation when you've been really, trained and resourced towards a different kind of end goal and purpose. But that said, if we do that, I think that, obviously lawyers are just incredibly smart. We're incredibly resourceful. We can take problems and put them into kind of bite-sized chunks that are solvable. And like, that's what great entrepreneurs do. So I think, lawyers make great entrepreneurs if they can, figure out how to make the leap to do it.
So, well, then speaking from a personal, from personal experience, how did you get Headnote together? Did you sort of outsource some of those things you were less comfortable with? Did you like go to a shaman who gave you the confidence to launch your own business? Or is there some kind of like some whispering kind of angel investing? I mean, it all seems very mystical. And sometimes, like, these companies come out and they don't actually make money, and then they make money somehow not making money. So it seems very mystical. How did you really get Headnote going? What was the genesis of it for you? And then did you have help attaining that entrepreneurial spirit, you personally?
Yeah, I mean, yes is the answer. Like a lot of help. I think like a lot.
Totally.
I think that I'm a huge like network and community person. I really think that like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and a lot of times if you just ask, you'll be shocked at what you'll get from people. And so for my own journey, there's a few kind of things. One is like I'm in San Francisco. I went to work at Google. That was my first real time working like in tech. I'd always done traditional litigation work at law firms and literally worked at a law firm my whole life. I did not have any idea about jobs like product manager. I mean, this never occurred to me as like, yes, of course someone needs to do that as a job, but in my
somebody's paying for that. Yeah, you're kind of questioning.
Right. And now I still figure out jobs people do in tech. And I'm like, wow, if someone would have told me that was a job in high school, like I would have run to college to do it. Like I didn't know. Like,
right. Yeah.
So part of it is kind of as I kind of started expanding my universe on accident, right? Because I'm just looked geographically, I'm here. Literally every person almost that I know works in tech somehow, with the exception of some of the lawyers that work at law firms. But like every one of my friends somehow works in tech. And so that was really eye-opening for me. And then my husband, who's now my co-founder at Headnote, has always worked in tech and kind of was on that separate path of working at small companies and growing them, and they would get acquired by larger companies. And so he'd end up working at big tech companies. So I had kind of like watched him from the sidelines, and they didn't all end well. Sometimes the companies don't work and they close down, and he'll come home from work and say, well, the company closed down today. And we're like, wait, I'm sorry, what? Like it's another world.
And you move into the station wagon like Jewel, again,
right.
And you're like, well, there's some glamour to the end of this. There's a silver lining here.
That's when you have the one person with the steady job in legal who can like help the couple run
keep
that
it together.
Like back to the drawing board. But
then you come aboard and you're like, guess what? I'm going to launch a company. And then your husband like, oh no, or is he like, oh yay,
No, he's like a total. He has that like he loves to take risks in smart ways. So he was like. He had grown up also working at law firms that his family owned. We're both from these big families of lawyers, and he had actually run the AR process at his dad's firm.
Oh,
and
wow.
he had seen like how much money they were writing off and trying to understand why that was okay, and just like wrapping his head around that.
Just
like,
burning money.
Yeah, like that's just okay. We're just writing off like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so he had lived that experience as well. So when I was at Google and I knew there were some kind of continuing issues that I had seen popping up at every different kind of place I had worked as a lawyer. It didn't matter the configuration, solo office, Fortune 1 company. Like there are some problems that run across the whole industry. And one of them was transactions, right? Like, why is it so hard to pay and get paid? And why does it take so long? Like in legal, why is it okay to have a 94-day DSO? Like that's the longest of like any service industry in the US. And we're okay with it. And we collect, 86 cents on the dollar. And that's okay. Like, again, imagine your doctor or some other, your therapist, and you're like, I'm not going to pay you. I'll pay you like 3 or 4 months from now. And I'm actually only going to pay you like 85% of the bill. Like, no, that's not how I do work. But our industry just has like accepted it. And so he thought that was interesting. And I had seen this kind of taking place. And so I decided to leave Google. He was really supportive. My parents thought I had lost my mind, as parents do, and went about the path of starting this company. And from there, a million people helped, to be honest. I mean, I did everything I could to tap into my network. Anybody I knew who might have valuable information to help me, I asked if I could take them to coffee. I bought them dinner. I sat with my notebook and would drive all over the Bay Area to meet them, to make it easy for them, and just want to learn. Like, what does it mean? Like, what is venture backed? What does it take to be a venture backed business?
Right. Yeah.
What what's market size? Like, I didn't go to business school, right? So I had to kind of like figure out how to do it myself and learn from the people that are in my network. And then that led me to getting to a program and meeting some amazing entrepreneurs and VCs and investors called NFX. And NFX was, at that time, an invite-only accelerator program, like a Y Combinator. And you had to, be invited to join and go through this rigorous 3-month process. Like, it was like a very stressful summer. And I very much wanted to be involved and kind of vied for the invite. And I got it and had to somehow sell myself on the interviews, and they let me in, and they let me and my team in. And we, just worked our ass off to figure out what is the exact way that Headnote's going to exist. And 3 months later, it was born.
Wow.
Speaking of digital marketing, I got to ask you, what's it like inside Google? And was there anything you picked up working there that really helped you, that you think maybe gave you a little bit of a lift when you were building Headnote?
Yeah, definitely. What's it really like working?
So yeah, like everybody on like unicycles.
Yeah.
Seriously,
they do.
what's
They
the
do.
cool stuff?
100%. It's literally like, it is. We used to do, suddenly forgetting the name, but there's a certain kind of bicycle that like 10 people can ride, and there's like a wheel in the middle, and you have to like work together. We would do team building things with those. I forget what they're called.
Nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty much like what you see on TV. Silicon Valley, if you watch that show, is, people out here really do love it because it's so satirical, but also it's really like that in the most silly ways. If you distill down what's happening at some tech companies and how like really silly it is at its core, like that show does a pretty good job of it. So yeah, I mean, it's like they're trying to attract the best talent in the world by making a place to go to work that you can't wait to go to. And as a result, there is everything you could ever want. If you want, your laundry, you want to have your laundry and your dry cleaning done while you're at work, like the service will come to your desk and pick it up and it'll come back perfect. You want any kind of food there. You want to take a terrarium class, there's one going on Tuesday. Their gym, you name it. It's a really fun place to work. And yes, there's bikes everywhere.
That's awesome.
It's a fun environment and totally silly.
It sounds like working for Willy Wonka.
Well, yeah, but and then at Headnote, you're like, okay, guys, we're having a terrarium class, and then Carol doesn't want to come, and you're like, Carol, I will fire you if you don't get in here and make this terrarium.
And you better like it. Yeah, it's, that's part of the problem with being it's amazing to have a company out here and like just the access to how much you can learn and the great investors and talent. But like, also, I clearly can't compete with Google. Like, I don't have, beanbags and massage chairs and like golf, whatever, like VR system that you could do next to your desk. Like, I'm not going to have any of that stuff. So, maybe we can bring in lunch on Fridays. Like, that's kind of more like where we're at. And so we have to find people, obviously, that are motivated by building something and by being company owners, along with us. But it is kind of an interesting dynamic because we all work at those companies out here, and then you leave them to do your own thing, and you have to compete with them in certain ways for talent, which is tough. As far as like, what did I learn there that maybe gave me a lift? I think that it was really interesting because everywhere I had ever worked, the legal department or the lawyers, the way the hierarchy worked, like the lawyers were always at the very top of the pyramid. As like the quote, these are the people they're billing, they're the ones that make the money. Other, things are rolled up into supporting them because like this is the lifeblood of how the business is going to make money and all of those things. Google's not like that. Like, their top of the pyramid is totally different than legal industry. Like, lawyers are very important to Google. They need them. They're near the top, but at the top is the tech talent. So, engineers and really, really strong product people are going to be, really the ones. I remember it was really the first environment I worked at where like the lawyers were certainly very, very important, but there's just nobody more important than the tech. It made me realize how important it is to have really strong tech, and that, you can't, it's not like a one size fits all, right? Like it's very much about the people that are building it and what you're building. And it's a creative art. It's not like, doing something where you just take like A plus B equals C. Like there's, just like when you write a brief, right? Or you make an argument, like there's 50 arguments you can make. There's 100 ways to skin a cat. Like it's the same thing with building stuff, like building software. Like there's not just 10 people can disagree on the right way to do something. So it really matters. The people and how you elevate the tech. And then, it was just a totally different way of organizing the operations of a business. They have their own problems, but there's no phones, there's no desk phones anywhere. You chat, Google Chat. Like if you need somebody, you chat them, their cell phones are listed. Just a way of looking at how to streamline kind of business operations differently. And then I think really like just the connections of the people you meet when you're working there and the access you have to learn, and then relying on that network when you need help, and just, putting that question out there to your network and seeing who will answer it. Like when you have people in your network that really know, have been there and done that, and that's a place where a lot of people have been there and done that. So.
So here's a question. I mean, if you had to give somebody a piece of advice, I mean, besides get Headnote to kind of coalesce the accounts receivable quagmire that all businesses are kind of facing, I wonder, is it invest in the tech, or is it invest in sort of the way that you were changing the organization? Should they change the organizational structure of their law firms? I mean, what's one piece of advice you could give our audience that they could take back to their firms of varying sizes and sort of enact a little bit of a change here? Yeah.
Great question. I think that it's a really overwhelming thing to think about making change for anyone, like ever.
Sure.
But for law firms, especially, right? Especially if you are a very small or solo and you're very resource constrained, you're doing a lot yourself, you're incredibly time starved, every minute matters. The idea of needing to put any real investment into making a big change is really scary, and something that you continue to kind of put off. And so I think if you can figure out how to break down what you're seeing or what you see as the problems into digestible chunks that can be solvable. So you don't have to feel like, I got to overhaul this whole system. I've got to like invest in so many things. Like I don't even know where to get started. There's such finite areas of your process that you can start looking at to make changes without necessarily subbing out entire systems. And so, for Headnote, this was made so that we're not necessarily trying to replace any existing system you have, or any software. You most likely aren't using anything at this point of your process, and you can add something in that's going to give you a big ROI without a huge investment. I think that's important. If you're looking at, how you're intaking clients, if maybe using or adding a CRM is if that's a pain point, like, wow, the amount of time it takes to close a client, or like how we're actually finding them and tracking them through that process. I'm spending so much time. Like there's great legal CRM software that people should be using. I think Lawmatics is like an awesome platform. And I think that same thing on the marketing automation side. We look at if you can turn your process into digestible chunks and look at, do I want to make an investment in changing out everything to an all-in-one cloud-based practice management? Maybe, or maybe that seems like too big of a jump for me right now, and I want to find little areas that I could do minimal investment and get a big ROI. Whenever there's a big problem that you see, I just think it makes it so much easier to try to break it down into those digestible chunks and then solve one thing at a time. Just solve for that thing today.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I just saw on Twitter, incremental is not a dirty word. I think most people want to change. We want that next day fix, and you get your meal delivery service, you get your body by whoever, and in 2 weeks it's not like that. You just don't have the stick to it. So there's something great about your product and the fact that it comes from a lawyer who understands that the hustle can't stop to fix itself. It's like you can't pull the plane over.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
You gotta build the plane while we're flying it.
That's what it is.
Like, we're all just trying to figure it out. And I do think that that's a mistake some tech companies make, when they look at, and a lot of them, especially for lawyers, like the solution they're proposing might be a much better way of doing things. But is there actually going to be an ability for the firm to figure out how to make that investment? And is it going to be, it's a risk, right? Or risk averse. Do I want to shut down operations for even like a day, or figure out, I need to live without some functionality while we switch over? Like, that's scary.
Well, it's so funny because you're talking about that. And I remember taking over as the marketing director, and I was like, we need a staff retreat. I was like, I want to go pet lions, and, I want everybody. And one of my shareholders was like, what? And I was like, yeah. We just stop working and go feed lions, and I'll take pictures of it and it'll be great. And like, as a marketer, I was like, brilliant.
Yeah.
And then the law firm owners were like, what? So what's going to happen to this deposition? What's going to happen to this? What's going to happen to this? This is past the statutes of limitations, and this, associate dropped the ball. So we'll just go and take them to pet tigers. That'll be great. It's so funny to think like there's an opportunity for us to do something amazing. And you're like, no, we can't stop. We can't stop to do a firm-wide training on new software. We can't stop to pet tigers. Right. We can't, do this or that. So, so just really quick and really fast before we go, I want to know how you help bring Headnote into the process. How do you help incrementally help law firms figure out how Headnote can help them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a big part of my passion, just given how much time I've spent working at firms. Like, it has to be these digestible chunks. And so really, when we take a firm's process, we look at what they're doing, and we know that most firms are using a lot of different things to get to the point of invoice creation. Like, there's multiple different kinds of software, time tracking, and creating those billing entries and going through pre-bill process and then creating the invoice. And then the invoice goes out, and there's really nothing that happens after that point besides people tracking, where are we in this payment funnel, right? Is the client paid? Have we followed up with them? We have AR meetings where we come together monthly and we sit at a table and we go around and say, like, who's followed up with so-and-so? What about this? What about that? Like, what we look at Headnote is, like, you don't need to actually change anything that you're doing prior to that invoice being created. Like, you can keep using your current systems. Maybe there's parts of that you like or dislike. Maybe you do or do not want to get off of them, whether you like them or not. It doesn't really matter to us. We know that you're going to mostly be sending your invoices as a PDF attached to an email, no matter how they were created. So we give you a system that you can add into whatever other software you're using via either direct integration or compatibility, and start automatically adding this really important piece to your post-invoicing process without making any change. Right away, you're going to get, embedded payments, which is generally faster payments, all kinds of really cool accounts receivable automation, like the ability for your clients to just click and pay, auto receipts automatically get sent, notifications go to everyone into the firm who needs it. You can set up automated collection functionality so that the platform automatically follows up on your behalf in the way that you choose, as long as you want, offering installment plans, like really cool automation that makes your life easier, but also then starts giving you data and analytics so that you can actually start making better decisions about things that are happening earlier in your process, and gives you a window into client activity. You can actually see if the client received the invoice, clicked on it, revisited it. So I think at Headnote, our real passion is that we want to make this part better in a way that will give you some real ROI, but we want to make your investment minimal, and you don't actually need to change anything you're doing up until the point of sending that invoice out. Everything could stay the same.
Nice. Nice. Take my money. Shut up and take my money. I'm trying to shove money in the speaker right now. I'm like, I need Headnote.
Yeah. So I mean, any firm that firm, solo, whatever, I still think of when solos have their own practice as a firm. I think that's important, right? Your business is your business. It's just because it's just you or some support staff doesn't mean it's not really functional firm. We will talk with all of the firms. We do, conversations over video or on the phone or in demos, and we'll hear what their process is and let them know if Headnote will work for them, or if, maybe there's something else that's going to be a better fit and if it can save them money and improve on some of their problems they're seeing. And so we'd love to do that with anyone who wants to learn more.
Yeah. So tell them where they can find you, learn more about Sarah and Headnote online.
Yeah, please. Headnote.com is where you can go. You can schedule a demo from that page, and you can always, you can learn more about me on the About Us page, and you can email me anytime with questions, Sarah, Sarah, @headnote.com.
5 questions we ask everyone.
What was the last book you read?
Oh, The Woman in the Window. So good.
Solid. All right. Number 2. What is your favorite place?
Oh, my house in Marin County, California.
Oh,
nice.
Number 3. What sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
Oh, well, the Lawson podcast, one of my favorites.
Thank you.
There you go. I get a ton, I love getting, signing up for stuff and getting it in my inbox. So like ALM, Above the Law, legal tech news, anything that relates to what we're doing, in our industry. I get a lot of information daily on what's going on in payments and fintech space. I love all of the things regarding this environment where I live, VC and tech investing, Crunchbase, CB Insights. And then of course I try to squeeze in seeing what's going on in the world at large. Today Show, CNN, whatever I can, tiny digestible chunks.
Nice.
Goodness. All right. Number 4. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
Mustard, 100%.
No hesitation. Uh-oh.
Mustard also could mean like 20 kinds of mustard because there's so many kinds.
You're absolutely right.
Old green mustard, honey mustard, Dijon mustard, yellow mustard. I think everything tastes better if it has mustard on it.
So it's just a kaleidoscope of mustard varieties that are with you on the island.
Yes.
I love it. All right. Here's the last one. Number 5. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
Wine, obviously. But I've moved recently from San Francisco to Marin County, and the house that we moved into, we inherited a hot tub.
Yeah.
And we joked about how we're I guess we're hot tub people now, and it turns out we are. And we really like to go Friday, kids go to bed, it's dusk, get in the hot tub with a glass of wine, and everything in the world seems like it's going to be just fine.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsonpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.